Gloria with Glory Be Resale, and I am here to do a what sold from November 17th to November 30th. And that was Thanksgiving in there. I did go to Boston for like 5 or 6 days during that time. So I put these 2 weeks together and we'll start it off with what sold on eBay. And the first thing to sell was this Jean Pierre turtleneck sweater, cable knit yellow, and I put dark academia on this. And this sold for $25, and the cost to me on it was $2. The next item to sell was this Adriana Papel Evening Essentials jacket in like a blue taffeta or emerald green. And this sold for $22.95, and the cost to me on it was 0. This was given to me by my sister-in-law. Next item to sell was this vintage carved wood Great Bunch wall shelf, and this sold for $29.75. The cost to me on it was $3. Next item to sell was this JM collection brown embroidered linen top, and this one sold for $18. I was hoping to get a little more than that because it was new with tags, but it had been sitting with not a lot of interest, so I took the offer of $18. Cost to me on it was $5.99. Next item to sell was this White House Black Market top. This was also new with tags. And this one I took an offer of $28. Cost to me on it was $3. Next item to sell was this kids spider snow bib, snow pants, overalls, and these sold for $35. Cost to me on them was $5.99. The next item to sell was this vintage Manhattan toy Lily doll, Ursula stuffed doll, and this sold for $18. Cost to me on it was $1.99. Next item to sell was this lot of 9 Proline Merino lambskin 7-inch rollers, and these sold for $40. Cost to me on them was $2.50. So this was a great pickup. I picked up a box of these for $5 for the whole box, and I did 2 lots of 9, and I might have kept whatever was left over, 3 or 4 of them for myself. So I made $80 off of with the $5 box of rollers. So that was good. Next item was this Mac in the Sack blue pink reversible lightweight down jacket, and this sold for $32, and the cost to me on it was $6.49. Next item to sell was this vintage Christmas tree table runner from Martha Stewart. This was early 2000s. And this sold for $24, and I picked it up for 99¢. Next item was this vintage 80s, 90s embroidered deer buck in the forest crew neck sweater, and this sold for $35. Cost to me on it was $3.50. The next item to sell was this set of 3 hand-forged twisted steel handed, spatulas, and these sold for $89, and the cost to me on them was $18. And I believe I'm missing one. You just unless it didn't fall into this, then I took it out. Order, page shift. Yeah, this embalming fluid bottle, and this sold for the full asking price of $49, and the cost to me on it was $1. I had 2 of these. I picked up another embalming fluid bottle too, which also sold. Uh, I don't know, that might still be coming up in a video. I'm not quite sure when I sold which one I sold first, so I won't say anything more about it. But I was glad I picked them up at $1 a piece because they sold quite well. Uh, Next item to sell was this St. John's knit maxi dress, and this sold for $65. Cost to me on it was $7.99. That took quite a while. I've had this when I lived in Boston. I think I just really lowered it down. I think I had it maybe over 100. And that's what I needed to do. It sold. So next item was this Cole Haan um, New York black hooded jacket. This I took an offer of $25. Cost to me on it was $1. The next item to sell on Poshmark, and not very much sold on Poshmark on those 2 weeks. Actually, Poshmark was one of my better ones last year. It's been terrible this year. I have not paid to boost anything. I think that their 20% is enough, but nothing's selling there. It's not a favorite platform of mine anymore. But anyway, I sold this vintage oil seascape. I took an offer of $28. Cost to me on it was $1.99. This did have a dent in the uh, frame in a couple of spots. I can see one right there, maybe. Yeah. Next item to sell was this vintage geometric print 70s dress, which I really liked. I didn't really want to take the $20, but I did. I looked to see what I paid for it. I paid $2, so I took the 20 and let it go. Next item and last item on Poshmark, well, maybe that was my last item. Nope, Eddie Bauer men's blue jacket that sold for $25, and the cost to me on this was $4.99. So not a great sell. And I'm gonna double check and see if there was any more I missed on Poshmark. I don't know if I stopped in the middle or what. Eddie Bauer. mm, So, okay. And then now over to Mercari. And I only sold 2 items in Mercari. That's another one that just, you know, doesn't do much. Depop was also bad. I stopped selling on Depop altogether because I get offers pretty regularly, and very rarely was it ever paid. Maybe twice that somebody actually paid when they offered. So it just wasn't worth the aggravation. The next item to sell was this pair of vintage home coat elephants, and these sold for $23.20, and the cost to me on them was $3. And the other thing to sell was this vintage pair of plastic IMC wall sconces. This IMC was cheaper, a little cheaper than a Sirocco or Homeco. So these sold for $16, and the cost to me on them was $2.98. Now over to Etsy, and the first thing to sell, this might have been the last thing, but it's here, so believe it, was this Home Sweet Home uh, wood sign from Mexico, and this sold for $19. The cost to me on it was $3. Next item to sell was this little vintage church made in Switzerland, a little wood church with the music box. And this sold for $40. The cost to me on it was $10. A little high for a $40 turnover, but still all right. It just happened that's what it cost. That's about the price that they were going for. Next item to sell was this little vintage divider box, and this sold for $45. Cost to me on it was $2. The next item to sell, and this wouldn't come up, so I'm just going to tell you what it was. It was a box of Christmas lights that I picked up, and I bought them for $1. They were new in box, and I sold them for 20. I had multiple. That might have been the last box. I know I don't have any more, and I had about 20 to start last year. The next item to sell was this. I have no idea how to say this name. Etienne Agner brown leather wallet, and this sold for $35, and the cost to me on it was $1. Next item to sell was this little vintage flocked skating Santa, and he sold for $15. Cost to me was $1. Might have been less, but we'll say $1. Next item to sell was this vintage, no, it's not vintage, this handmade primitive Santa door knob hanger, and this sold for $12, and the cost to me on it was, I put $1. This was something I got for myself a few years ago, and then I used it for a couple years. So we'll just say $1. I have no idea where I picked it up or how much I paid for it, but I also used it for a couple years. Next item to sell was this vintage 90s Bombay small chinoiserie planter for an air plant. This is pretty small. I think it's like 3 inches, 4 inches. So it was a small planter. And this sold for $16, and the cost to me on it was $1. Next item to sell was this vintage Sirocco federal wall mirror. And this had, I think it's like a plastic mirror, but it's also a curved one from Sirocco. And this sold for $130. Cost to me on it was $20. Next item to sell was this vintage wooden apothecary cabinet, little drawers. And this sold for $85. Cost to me on it was $12.50. But this did all right, considering it did have some issues, especially on the top. The top here, if you can see, has been, I don't know, painted and maybe tried to fill in. But anyway, it was, that's not surprising either if it's old enough. And I'd say this is probably 50s, 60s. So happy with that sale. Next item was this Delft coffee, little Delft coffee covered jar. This is a small jar. It's 6 inch. It was 6 inches tall and a few inches wide. So this sold for $35 and I paid $10 for it. Wasn't the greatest pickup. I had never seen the coffee jar and thought it was kind of cool. But $35 is all right. But you know, when I'm spending $10, I prefer to at least be getting 50 and preferably even more. So anyway, $35 and happy with it. The next item is this vintage carved wood jewelry box, trinket box, and this I sold for $25 and the cost to me on it was $2. Next item was this Santas of the World Germany Santa, and this is from like the 90s, I believe. And this sold for $22 and the cost to me on it was $1. And the last item to sell on Etsy was this driftwood light painted, a lighthouse painted on a piece of driftwood. And this sold for $35 and the cost to me on it was $5. That is everything that I sold from November 17th to November 30th. And if you wouldn't mind, if you could like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. It does help and gives me a little enthusiasm to be doing these videos. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have anything that, you want to share, any great sales or just something that is unusual that you picked up and you want to show what you sold it for, drop it in the comments. I'd love to mention it in one of my videos. And I will see you next time. And I don't know, that should be hopefully in another day or two.